Hello and welcome to Octagon Circles and Squares. I am Steven D'Agostino, and this is an NBC Sports podcast breaking down the cage, the mat, and the ring. For the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about the biggest storylines in combat sports, and there are none bigger this weekend than UFC 290. To help us break it down, we welcome on one half of the main event, Alexander the Great Volkanovski joins the show as he returns to 145 to defend his title against Yair Rodriguez. We also welcome on NBC Sports betting expert Brad Thomas to help give us some of our picks for the card, try winning some money as we go into the weekend. But first, we want to remind you to download the Roto-World app to receive breaking player news all season long, stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster, get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. The champ at 145 returns to his division as he joins us here on the pod to talk about his big upcoming scrap at UFC 290. Volk, how's it going, man? How's the weight cut been going? I see you're in the gym now, after it, seems like 24/7 these days.
Yeah, man. Like it's good. We're about to do a session, so I just had a physio, so that's why I don't usually do interviews with my shirt off, but just needed to get the physio done, get a session in, and then then I'll be chilling. But man, it's everything's going good. Weight's good. Everything's where we need to be. So I'm laughing.
The big cut from 55 back down to 45. How difficult has that cut been? Because on a few of your interviews, or in your videos rather, it actually seems like you guys planned ahead and bulked the correct way to prepare for this homecoming back to 45. Does that sound right?
Yeah, of course. We're obviously going to try and bulk and get a muscle and then get to a comfortable weight. We didn't obviously put on too much weight because I don't fight good too heavy anyway. So I didn't end up that much heavier fight day than I usually am anyway, even for lightweight. So it's not too bad. I might be holding maybe a very little bit more muscle, which, our numbers are good anyway, so I don't need to worry about the weight cut. So we're going to cruise through it. So I'm not too fast. So next week, obviously, it's going to be, that fight week, strict eating and water loading and all that type of stuff. But that's all a part of it. It's good because it lets me know that I'm about to fight. I'm ready for war. That's the process before war.
So for someone that's a huge foodie like yourself, and for anyone listening that hasn't seen your YouTube channel, I encourage them to please go. The most recent episode of Cooking with Volk, you had one less taco than probably what you wanted to. For anyone that's cut weight, there's always that like one dish or one food that like you're just pining after and it just haunts you. As a foodie, like what is the one thing that you're gonna get after and tear up after this weight cut and after the fight as part of your post-fight ritual?
Not sure, actually. I'm not sure. Actually, I just took a couple of the guys to the famous taco spot just down the road here, like where we are in Vegas, and they got stuck into that, and that looked good. So it made me be like, you know what, I might have to stop by here after the fight because really, really take advantage of Vegas and some foods, maybe In-N-Out Burger. I don't know. We'll see. But there's definitely a couple of options that I'll be keen for.
So back down to 45, as we discussed, how are you feeling as far as like speed and confidence? I know the Makhachev fight wasn't what you wanted, but there had to have been some kind of morale boost with how you performed, especially with the wrestling, especially with the grappling with someone bigger. Coming back down to 45, do you feel leaner and faster? Or does it feel like you just took a weight off and you're back to where you want to be?
Yeah, of course. That's why even when I was doing the bulk for 155, I started realizing I don't want to be too much heavier. I wasn't moving as quick as I usually do. So them last few weeks, I made sure I started bringing it down, and that's where I felt a lot better. And then as soon as I started this camp and obviously started a little bit lighter, getting through the weeks of camp was so much better than 155 carrying that extra weight. I'm obviously faster now. I'm more dynamic and explosive. So that's where I'm at. I'm where I'm meant to be. Featherweight is obviously my division, where I'm best at, and even at lightweight, I think me fighting at the same weight as I would at featherweight would still be ideal, even at lightweight.
Not so many people have even come close to you at this division, as you've said. Yair does pose a unique challenge in just his striking. It's very creative, a lot of angles that you're not used to seeing. For this camp, though, you've got guys like Izzy, Carl Van Roon. I don't really know how much better you could prepare for someone that's as unorthodox as Yair. Just talk us through the camp and the looks those guys are giving you to help you for this fight.
Well, that's what it's all about. It's all about getting good guys in that are going to give me as many different looks as I can, unpredictable looks. And, people, not only guys that are just going to throw anything just for the sake of it, these guys understand kicking. You know, I've got like 11-time world champion, Taekwondo world champion Carl Van Room, who's 6'4" or 3 or whatever it is, and like, you know, much bigger, throwing tornado kicks and you name it at me. And then I've got, you know, as you said, Izzy throwing all sorts of stuff. I've got Blood Diamonds, who, you know, very, very unpredictable, even with the elbows, knees, kicks. You know, he can kick you while you're face to face. Very, very unorthodox and awkward, which has been a great look for me. Brenton Mumford, another guy that helped me this camp, loves switching stances, loves kicking from both stances, loves his elbows. So just giving me as many looks just to keep me on my toes while I'm doing my thing.
You guys actually have some common opponents, and for someone with a high fight IQ like yourself that watches a lot of tape, have you looked at like the Holloway fight, the Ortega fight, his fight against Korean Zombie, and you know even Dan Hooker has fought him before? I'm sure that's a lot of intel that you're able to get leading up to this fight.
Yeah, it's always good to look at fights, but I mean, you want to look at the latest fights, and then you got to realize that they're going to change the game, even for me, right? Like that's what a lot of people that you want to watch things, you want to see habits, but I mean, the fighter Yair is now compared to when he fought someone like Dan Hooker or even, you know, Frankie Edgar or even Zombie, completely different fighter. Obviously, a lot of the same things, but way better at certain ranges. You know, I think he was more better at just a certain one range back early in his days. Now he's just as dangerous in every range. So that's something that excites me. Can't wait to go out there and really systematically break him down and show people that even the most unpredictable and awkward and hardest guys to sort of train for, even I can make them really just shut them completely down.
When you have two elite strikers that usually link up, something that happens a lot is it ends up going to the ground. And obviously, you showed your grappling chops in that last fight. You're able to hang with anyone on the floor. Is that an option right now? Or are you willing to meet him where he's strong and really pick him apart where he's at his best? Does that challenge excite you to do it on the feet?
Oh well, man. Like you know, everyone knows that I love to take people out of their own game as well. You know, I like really challenging people and showing people how wide my skill set is, how well rounded I really am. You know, no matter who it is, even the strikers, I go out there and outstrike them. Even the wrestlers, I'll wrestle against them, tire them out. Next minute, I'm ending up on top of them. You know what I mean? I love to do that. So, you know, the Taekwondo challenge excites me. So, can't wait to throw some spin heel kicks, and Taekwondo Volk's going to come for you know, really beat him at his own game.
Yeah, footy Volk is a version. We got Taekwondo Volk. We got all kinds of iterations. I'm sure. Yeah. A couple more real quick before let you go here. We had mentioned, you know, Dan Hooker, who's also on the card, Izzy who you're training with, Whittaker's on the card. This Australian movement, New Zealand movement that's been going on in the sport has really exploded in like last decade or so. From your perspective on the inside, what was like the impetus for that? And how does it feel to be a huge contributor to this movement of where elite fighters are coming from that part of the world?
Yeah, man, it's awesome. It really is. It's cool to see. It's cool to be a sort of a part of that. You know, we really are showing kids from small towns that anything is possible. You know, I'm just a regular bloke from a tiny gym. You know what I mean? And look where we are now. So I'm showing everyone back home like we're growing the sport. So now you get a lot of young, talented athletes starting MMA. We've always had very talented kids and athletic kids in Australia. Now they're starting to do MMA. They're growing up training MMA, which is exciting, and it just shows you that, you know, we're going to have champions out of Australia and New Zealand area for a very long time.
All right, final question. As you said, big movement in Australia. I feel like the shoey celebration has also taken the sport by storm. So, in your view, what are the variables that make an elite shoey celebration?
I think the shoey's crazy enough as it is. You know what I mean? But I mean, like the one thing that, yeah, I don't do the shoeys as much. I'll do them, but I don't mind cleaner shoes. I'll make sure they're not raggedy, old-looking things. But I think that's when people take it to the next level. Me, I'm like, depends how drunk I am. I might take it to the next level. But usually, straight after a fight, I might chuck one. I'm hoping it's one of the new shoes that we just walked out in, so they're nice and fresh.
I think the last time you did one, it was your hand placement was surreal, and it like cupped it perfectly. You didn't just spill a drop. Right? Like, that's a veteran move right there.
That's a veteran. See, a lot of people get it wrong. You got them little gaps for the ankles and the shoes. Make sure you cover them up. You get a nice smooth run straight down the front.
Well, for all the Volk fans that are going to do shoeys after this weekend, that is your pro tip there.
Get it right.
Yes. Well, like I said, I know you're super busy here. We appreciate the time. Thank you so much
No
best of
worries.
luck. Yeah, best of luck this upcoming weekend. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just a reminder, Sunday mornings mean MLB leadoff on Peacock. You can live stream games all season long, and this week, the NL West leading Rangers travel to the nation's capital to face the Nationals. Coverage of the matchup begins at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Again, it's exclusively on Peacock. We welcome in my good friend and our betting analyst, Brad Thomas. Brad, how's it going, man? This is a super exciting card we got to look forward to this weekend. A lot of good fun bets, and we couldn't imagine doing it without getting your 2 cents. So let's start off with the first fight on the main card, Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of meat on the bone here, but maybe we're missing something, so that's why we're bringing you in.
Yeah, no, this is an interesting fight, right? Like, I think you and I in the wrestling collective are excited for Bo Nickal, have been excited for Bo Nickal since day one, the second that we learned he was going to, make a run at becoming a UFC champion. But what's interesting about the fights that he's had so far, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it just feels like they're kind of easing him in or putting a little meat on the bones, as you would say, on his fighting resume. I don't think he's had a fight that he could have or should have lost. And this is another one here. I'll just get into a quick breakdown that I had of this fight that I thought was pretty interesting, right? So we look at Tresean Gore and, 4-2, but what's weird about this fight, right, is Tresean Gore, I think he would want to be in a fight where he's going to go against someone who's going to stand and bang. I think that's his best shot of winning, right? Because if you watch him in fights with any type of grappler, he kind of gets weary of, if you go level change, he gets a little wobbly, he gets a little shaky. And I think that good wrestlers, elite grapplers exploit that. And it feels like kind of like one of those matchup situations where Dana White's like, hey, let's get Bo Nickal, someone who's afraid to go to the ground, afraid to grapple against a really good wrestler, a guy who's got really good jits. I don't want to say really good jits and just kind of like take away from all the other guys. Like, he's only a blue belt, but like, a great wrestler with a blue belt is a lot better than I'd say 90% of the UFC. So this one's a hard fight for me to pick, like a bet, like standalone. But I do think that Nickal, like, it's not like I think, like, I would put a ton of money on Nickal to finish inside the distance. So it's probably going to be a parlay piece for me. What do you think about this fight?
The thing that you said that I just really clicks and I want to go back to is the fact that it feels like the UFC is easing Bo Nickal in, right?
Yes.
And we've seen this with a lot of the handpicked fighters that Dana and the UFC really think there's a lot of potential, whether it's like, Connor or Sage sure. Northcutt or, they take their time and they know that there is a future with this fighter. No offense to Tresean Gore. We've seen him on The Ultimate Fighter. He's had, some success, but Bo Nickal, like you said, I mean, we're talking about an Olympic caliber wrestler here. We're talking about someone that has wild grappling chops, even for a blue belt. He's competed in some high profile grappling matches. I don't think there's really much else to say. He's going to win. If you want to find value, I think you got to get into some of the round props. All 3 of Bo's wins in the UFC are by submission. All 4 of his fights total are all in the first round. So I'll probably be looking at, I'll probably sprinkle a little bit, Bo Nickal by submission, Bo Nickal first round. I might put them together. Or to your point, Brad, it might be a parlay piece where I tie it together with another long odds fight to try and get it somewhere manageable. The other bet that I love with Bo Nickal, and we can't do it now, but something to keep an eye out is at the beginning of the year, there's always the props of so-and-so will end the year with the belt. So we'll see how Dana plays this, and we'll see how Bo's progression goes throughout the remainder of the year. But January 1st, take a look at the Bo Nickal to hold the belt at the end of 2024. I almost took it this year, but I was like, I think they're taking their time. They're not going to give him enough fights to get the belt. I think by next year, we are going to see Bo Nickal headlining a card for a title shot. And the pedigree is too good there not to put some action on that bet. So like that. That's our first fight of the night. Our second fight, Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker. This one a little tougher, Brad.
Yeah. This one's difficult, right? And, it's funny because we think about Dan Hooker and we're like, I think you even said this before we started talking, was like, man, he hasn't been good, right? He's been losing a lot of fights, but then I go down and I look at the fight, the people that he's fought so far, This man is fighting everyone. He has losses against some of the best fighters. But my problem with Dan Hooker is he's normally the longer, taller fighter, and he's terrible at terrible. I hate saying this about elite talent, so I don't want to say terrible, but he's not the greatest at using his length in a fight. Now he's against Turner, who has a reach advantage, has the height advantage, and I think can stand and bang the entire time, right? So how do we, like, when I went back and I looked at a couple of Hooker's fights and I just like thought about like his wins. Let's like talk about his win against Felder, right? When he beat Felder, like what he did the best was he stayed inside the pocket, right? He stayed inside the pocket and he picked him apart. I don't think Turner's going to let him get inside the pocket. And that's what scares me about this fight. Like when I think about this fight, I think if Turner, if he gets inside the pocket on Turner, I think Turner grapples him to death. I think Turner does not want that to happen. Excuse me. I think Hooker tries to grapple Turner to death. I think Turner doesn't want that to happen. He wants to use an advantage. He's explosive with his strikes. Man, it's going to be interesting because I don't want to lay minus 245 or 230, but I don't see a pathway to victory for Dan Hooker, which makes me kind of think, do you think that price is too short on Turner?
Yeah, I actually think that this price should be longer for Turner. And I mean, you look at the Whittaker card, which we'll get into in a moment here, the Whittaker fight rather, where he's like minus 400. I think Jalin Turner should be about that same as well. Dan's lost, 4 of his last 6. He hasn't, looked particularly well. To your point, like, yes, he's fought Makhachev and he's fought some other really tough guys, but Turner's really tough as well.
Yes.
I'm probably going to fade this fight entirely off my card. The only thing, because I love getting hurt and I'm a real sicko, is I'll probably end up putting, in the final hours before the card starts, I'll probably put like maybe a half unit or something on Dan Hooker to win by KO, because really that's his only shot. I don't see him grinding out a decision. Turner's too good on the ground. I mean, if this fight is going to go Dan Hooker's way, it's going to come by, a body shot KO or some kind of, huge Hail Mary pass. And, there's value in that, and you could probably get pretty good odds on it. So I'll probably sprinkle a little bit, but nothing to lose the house on. So that's probably the only way I'll get involved in this fight.
I want to ask you one more question about this fight too. Like, how significant was that hand injury that kept him out of 285? Like, it's just like when I bet horses, and if someone's come off an injury, I just don't love backing them. Like, it's tough, man. It's just not my cup of tea. Yeah,
a hand injury is tough too for someone like, Dan Hooker's profile, who is an elite striker, right?
Yeah.
If we were talking about, there's ways for his game to kind of to etch around it, like, we could get on the ground here, and I don't think the hand will be as much of an issue if he's, pulling guard and looking for an active guard submission. But this is a guy that uses his hands a lot. He's striking a lot. I don't know. And those, coming out of, those camps out in New Zealand, Australia, even with Volk, and we'll get into that, they're not going to be very open about a lot of what's going on in the camp. So we don't know the extent of Dan Hooker's injury. It could be a lot worse, but it's not something I'm willing to gamble on for those odds.
Exactly.
Speaking of Aussies, we have another mainstay from that part of the world, Robert Whittaker, taking on DDP, Dricus du Plessis. Interesting fight here. I mean, Whittaker's only has 2 losses in nearly a decade, both from the same man, which, nothing to be ashamed of losing to Izzy, and one of those by KO. DDP kind of, coming back on the scene, has been red hot as well. What do you make of this fight, Brad?
Listen, this is a funny fight, right? Because I would like, if we were talking about betting like your friend, like if your friend goes, hey, who are you going to bet in this fight? Even odds, I'm taking Whittaker 100% of the time, right? He's a great fighter. He's fought great fighters. And I think he is one of those fighters who has the great neutralizer to what DDP has. And DDP is, a lot of, I don't want to say chaos, because I'm going to use that for another fighter. A lot of really, really significant strikes that change the course of a fight. I don't think he's going to be a volume fighter in this match. And Robert Whittaker is one of those guys who he knows how to grind out fights. He knows how to grind out long fights, 5 rounds. If you look at his last, 5 fights, I think all 5 have gone the distance. But it's not, you're not going to make money sitting here backing a minus 440 favorite, 400, excuse me. I think DDP at plus 285. Okay, this is where we start to get into how you bet this fight, right? I don't think DDP wins this fight if it goes the distance. So there's no way I'm going to bet him at plus 285, right? Because I'm losing out on value. If I want to bet DDP, which I probably will do this once the line comes out, I'll bet him inside the distance. That's how we are going to see this fight pan out for a victory for DDP. Now, if you want to bet Whittaker, I would imagine they're probably going to price this around minus 165 for inside the distance. Bet Whittaker to win inside the distance, or you can just bet inside the distance if you don't like the value. I mean, if you don't like taking the chance and you're okay with a minus 165. What do you think about this fight? Am I on the right path? Like, I just think I can extract more value that way.
I think you're on the right path, whereas Whittaker's odds right now at minus 400 is absurd. I can't back Whittaker doing that. The one thing that always worries me about fights like this is Whittaker. A lot of people, I think you're paying the experience tax, right? Is what you're paying for this. He's a name who's headlined a lot of high profile fights, a lot of high profile cards. That's what you're paying for. But the thing, what comes with experience is also mileage, and we've seen a lot of beatings that Whittaker's given and been dealt himself.
Yeah.
At some point that catches up with you, and we've all seen the bottom fall out. And I'm kind of there with Whittaker. I just feel like it's going to happen eventually, where we're going to see him drop a couple fights back to back. And you talk a guy like DDP, who is a very elite striker with a very elite kickboxing background. Is the experience there? No. But I mean, he's just fresher. He's a fresher fighter. And if Whittaker is more interested in taking these fights to go the distance, as we've seen, like you mentioned, Brad, most of his wins have gone, to decision. I actually like DDP in a lot of that, just because he's a little bit fresher, the fighter within the octagon. I'm not taking Whittaker. I would definitely just take DDP money line here, to be honest. Okay. And feel pretty good about it. I think he's probably my one big upset of the card. And, I think you could probably get it for like plus 250-ish right now. Or no, sorry, at plus 310, even plus 300. I think you said like,
I like that.
FanDuel plus 270. Like, yeah, why not? I could definitely see DDP keeping his winning streak going here with Whittaker. Okay, now we're going to get into the co-main event, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. These guys have met before, Brad, so maybe there's a little bit that we could derive from that when we're looking at our betting card.
Yeah, man. I was telling you, like, I love watching Moreno fight, right? Like, he's one of those fighters who in every fight, he just puts his heart and his soul into everything. And it makes you not want to bet against them, but I'm going to bet on Pantoja. Pantoja's beat him twice, right? The first time was Ultimate Fighter, then beat him in Chile by decision. It's not because I think Pantoja's a better fighter, right? I think they're a lot more even in terms of what they do well than the odds suggest, right? Moreno at minus 190-ish as the favorite, Pantoja about plus 145 as the dog. What's great about this fight, and if you want to back Moreno, I won't be mad at you, because Moreno has gotten better as his career has gone on, his career arc, and where that experience, I think, has helped him out is in his technical ability, his technical striking. But just Pantoja's the wild card who comes in here without that elusive belt victory over Moreno. So for me, I'm just going to take this as closer to a coin flip than the odds suggest, and take Pantoja at plus 144 is what I looked it up earlier this morning.
Yeah, you're definitely right that this does seem like a coin flip fight here. If I was going to get involved, I'm probably looking at some of the round totals.
Okay.
So the flyweight, the one big thing people love doing is the flyweight unders for rounds. These guys are explosive. Yeah. They're just flying all over the place. Finishes happen all the time. I do think here, though, that these guys are going to respect each other quite a bit. The history's there. We also kind of saw this with Moreno and when he was with his trilogy against Figueroa. Like, they're gonna be comfortable like letting this play out a little bit. I don't see it coming out guns blazing. I think Moreno knows that Pantoja is dangerous. Pantoja obviously willing to go the distance. So if I'm gonna get involved, I'm probably gonna take the over on the rounds, or I'm gonna take the fight to actually go the distance. I'll feel a little better taking the round over though for this fight.
I like that.
All right, time for the main event. It's Alexander Volkanovski against Yair Rodriguez. Last time out, Volk. Is there such a thing as moral victories in MMA? I'm not sure. But speaking with him earlier in the pod, I mean, he sounds like he's mentally in a good place. strategically seems locked in for this fight, and the odds reflect that, Brad.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about the weight cut and how would it be after having to come back down. I just cannot see a world where Rodriguez wins this fight. I had to actually go back, right? So for those who haven't watched Volkanovski fight, he's a very good fighter at coming forward, picking you apart. Like, it's like one of those things where if something's too difficult at first, right? Like this big mountain or a tree, let's use a tree. To chop a tree down, you're just not going to go with one strike. You're going to, chop it together, little small pieces. Those add up, right? That's how Volkanovski fights. So I had to literally go back and watch Rodriguez multiple times because I wanted to see if I could literally find a pathway to victory for Rodriguez. And one thing that I found, and it wasn't what I was looking for. It was when Rodriguez fights a fighter who comes forward on them, he is not very good at moving. He likes to rely on his strength. He likes to rely on his, specialties or okay, I'll give you an example to kind of piece this up, and then I need to know what you think about what I'm saying of this. So, good example against the Korean Zombie, right? This happened, I think, in round 2. The whole fight, it was this where Korean Zombie was coming forward and Rodriguez was just trying to kind of strike his way out of it instead of move his way out of it. Well, Korean Zombie comes forward, he's piecing up. Instead of Rodriguez throwing, jab or moving out of the way, he actually throws a spinning elbow, misses. Obviously, Korean Zombie goes into the clinch, probably should have taken him down, right? But I feel like that's like Rodriguez's MO, right? Like he accepts this kind of pressure, and instead of moving around and being in good position, he tries to kind of like swing his way out of it. What are your thoughts on this fight? I like Volkanovski. Like we talked about this before we went on, that I will probably take Volkanovski parlayed with Bo Nickal inside the distance. I think that could get us closer to -200. I know people don't have an appetite for laying those big prices, but we have to talk about implied probability. I think the implied probability there is way higher than the odds will suggest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the only path for Yair here, right, is to lure Volk into some kind of wild slugfest, have him lose some of that discipline, and then and hurt him in an exchange in that way. The problem is Volkanovski might be the most disciplined fighter that we've seen. I mean, possibly ever, certainly within the last decade. I mean, even speaking with him earlier, I mean, Volk is locked in every way, and it's a huge weapon in his arsenal. People don't talk about it enough. I mean, he is totally locked in. You've never seen him get out of pocket anywhere in a fight. The other thing with Volk, too, is Volk wants to meet Yair where he's strong, and he said as much in the interview. We saw it in the Izzy fight. I mean, did he lose a lot of those exchanges on the ground? Maybe, but he was game. He was laughing. He was smiling. He was holding his own. He had some takedown attempts. I mean, he wants to meet guys where they're strong, and he's going to meet Yair on the feet. He studied his tape. I don't think he's going to be drawn into some wild scrap and get KO'd. So for me, there really isn't a huge path to victory, at least not one that I'm willing to lay action on. I think your bet, Brad, parlaying it with another insanely wild no sweat parlay here, which is good because if our card is I'm taking DDP and I'm sprinkling Dan Hooker KO, I got enough sweat going on.
Yeah,
so
you
I'm very happy parlaying Volk here with a Bo Nickal inside the distance, Bo Nickal submission. Both those are wild odds money line wise, but you could probably get it somewhere a little bit more reasonable where it's worth dropping a couple extra units and covering the rest of your cards. So I do like that bet a lot. Any final thoughts, Brad, before we wrap it up here?
I'm so excited for this card because there's a lot of fighters that I'm really looking forward to, kind of continuing to be excellent. Moreno, Nickal finally getting, kind of getting higher in his UFC career. So, man, it's always a pleasure. I hope to do this again.
Yeah, we definitely will. And yes, us wrestlers, we do have a bias towards Nickal. It's very odd how much we love watching Bo Nickal fight. So our favorite fight might be the first one on the card. But exactly. Brad, no, we appreciate it, man. Thank you for hopping on. That'll do it for this edition of Octagon Circles and Squares. Enjoy UFC 290. Enjoy the bets. Enjoy the fights. We will see you guys next time.